What's up? Do you feel like, you just want to do certain things, but other people are responsible for the position you're in and why you can't do it? And do you blame the world? Do you feel like a victim? You know, do you feel like you don't have any control? Well, look, these Existential Stoic podcasts, and today we're going to talk about how responsible are we? But before that, if you guys have any questions, have any things you want answered, we would love to do shows about that. You can reach us by, putting a comment on the YouTube video, or you can email us. It's in the show notes. But that said, I'm Danny here, my buddy Randy. What's up, Randy?
Yo, Danny.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this because I was thinking about the other day. So Sartre has this concept of radical responsibility. So he thought, existentialist, right? Fan of authenticity, thought we were responsible literally for everything. The only thing we weren't responsible for, essentially, for Sartre is being born. So there's that famous line, we're thrown into existence, right? So, all of a sudden we exist. But once we exist, he thinks like we literally are responsible for everything we do. And he gives a classic example because he was writing, he in his mind, obviously, he's writing after World War II. So he's in his mind, he's thinking of the horrors that happened and how did it happen, right? And one of the biggest things people were questioning then was like, how did these Nazi soldiers that were like, not upper ranks, but lower, mid-level or whatever, how did they agree to do these horrific things, especially like at the concentration camps? Like, it's one thing to see, it's one thing to justify a soldier shooting another soldier in the field, right? Because you're being attacked. But to take people that are unarmed, right, weakened, held prisoner, and then to kill them, kind of ruthlessly, how can somebody do that? And Sartre's point was, like, you do have a choice, even though it might not seem like it. Like, he actually says, like, the soldier, if he doesn't agree with that, could kill himself,
Hmm.
right? That's always an option. And so it puts this level of responsibility at like absolute. That's why they call it radical responsibility. I thought it'd be interesting to talk about that because I think this is something that a lot of people don't think about. Like, how much do my actions, are they really in my control? Or, how much am I accountable for what I do and who I am? You know?
Yeah, it's a tough one because there's no way to tell what is true, what the answer is.
No, I mean, that's philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah, bingo. Bingo. Yeah. Well, in terms of responsibility, they say that like the more mature you are, the more responsible you are, the more successful you are, the more responsibility you're willing to assume.
I guess. I mean, what do you think? I mean, do you think like does it make sense to say that somebody like even if you imagine like World War II, would that person are they responsible if like if a senior officer tells them you have to do X and they do it because they're following rules? This is a big thing during the Nuremberg trials, right? Is a lot of the
Yeah.
people just said, "Well, I was just following orders," right? Like
Yeah.
it's not my fault, it's the senior guy's fault or it's Hitler's fault. Just
Yep.
like you see a lot of times, right, in politics and in everyday life, right? We blame whoever's leading and we
Dude,
don't take accountability for who we are and what we're doing.
well, you got to do what you got to do. Like I remember when I got out of vet school and I had a few $100,000 of student loan debt, and so every month I was paying like $3,000, $4,000,
Yeah.
and I needed to make money, so I took the job that I could get, and you know I needed to start according to the job. I needed to start euthanizing animals. I didn't have a choice in that, and even though I didn't want to do it, it was just one of those things where I was just like, I need the money. This is the job. And I felt terrible about it, but that's something that
Were you euthanizing sick animals though at that point, or was this like for pounds and stuff?
I mean, everything. So
Yeah.
I still remember, like, I was working at one of these pet stores that has veterinarians in there, and, they had me, like, euthanizing hamsters and gerbils and stuff like that that had, like, skin conditions, but it was just cheaper to euthanize them than
Because
to
they're like two
treat
bucks.
them. Yeah.
So yeah, yeah,
And,
basically.
and so it was completely against my, what I wanted to do, but it's just one of those things where I can understand what the soldiers felt like because they're like, well, I don't really want to die, so I guess I'll just keep doing this for today and see what happens.
Right. Well, and I think this is where you get a lot of pushback. Whenever I teach Sartre, you always get pushback from this concept a bit. And I think it's fair, right? Because I think a lot of us feel that way. Like that's a good example. Just like, like a lot of the Nazi soldiers, they're probably afraid for their families and stuff too, right? Like if they don't do something,
Yeah.
something else might happen. And I think this is where Sartre, because like we're rarely in positions like that where like life's the ch choices are that hard. But I think that your example is good. Where like, that's something clearly against your values, but it's like, do I do it because I need the money and I need to survive? I need to pay off this debt, or do I, refuse? Quit. But then you're going to still be asked to do it elsewhere anyway, probably. Most places you go at the very
Yeah.
least.
Or dude, or
And
like later on in my career when I was working in private practices and always around Christmas time, it was euthanasia season because that's when people don't want to have an old sick pet around the house. And so it's not that the pets are terminal during that season. It's
yeah,
just that, they have friends and family coming over. They don't want their dog pooping all over the place. And
yeah.
so they come in. And so again, something against my values, but what's it worth? Is it worth to me to argue, to say no, and then to get in trouble because I didn't want to euthanize them, and my boss reams me out, and then the boss goes ahead and does it anyways? So it's one of those things where I was just like, again, just do it and get through the day.
But you're not practicing anymore, importantly, too. So you
I
did
know, fuck that
change
career.
things. Well,
Yeah.
no, that's what I'm saying. I think that's important. So you saw that this was against your values. You did it because you had to, obviously, to make ends meet, and it was going to happen regardless of whether you did it or not. I mean, that's always obviously true. But, you ended up making that choice, taking responsibility, and doing something different because of that. And I think that's a good way that's kind of what Sartre's point is, right? Is that are we gonna, because I think a lot of people in that situation would probably just keep doing it and stay back because you already went to school, you spent all this time learning this stuff. Think about it, that's what most people
Hmm.
say, right? When you change careers, one of the first things people, they already went to school for this. You
Hmm.
already did this for this long, right? And I think that's something interesting. Like I got that a lot too when I said like I wanted to stop teaching because it's like, well, I don't agree with these universities. It's like I don't agree with this stuff anymore at all. Like I hate it. And so, you know, are we living in a way that's kind of consistent with our values? And are we doing things to change that? It might not be immediate. And I think Sartre's example of like the soldier, yeah, like if you're asked to murder thousands of people with gas in a chamber, that might be a situation where you take extreme measures, maybe not to do it. But like otherwise, right, are we actually doing things to actively change and taking responsibility for the life we're living? Or are we kind of pretending like it's nothing's our fault because it's all the world around us?
Hmm.
And is our response, I mean, I don't know, do you think we have responsibility like that? Are we that accountable for
I
ourselves
find I
or
find that I mean, I don't know, it's going to depend person to person, but I find the more responsibility I'm willing to assume, the more agency I have over my life. And it's
yeah.
tough because I look at these people who complain about stuff, how they're the victim of everything, and they're like, I just can't, it's not fair, like nothing, I can't do anything, the guy's demands keeping me down, all this stuff. And it's just
Yeah.
like, well, my experience in my life is I took responsibility for that stuff and then I made a difference in my life. I don't know if it's true for that person, but it's just it seems to be that responsibility is one of those things where like the more you are willing to take, the more you'll have.
Well, yeah, it's a direct correlation to agency and living your own life, right?
Hmm.
And living with respect to your values. And I like that point because I think that's true. Like I've been there, when I was really depressed, like it's hard to do anything, right?
Hmm.
And it feels like you're restrained by something outside of you, but you're really not. It's you. And we all hear people, especially nowadays, you hear people complain all the time about stuff, but they do nothing. And it's like, well, okay, I get you don't like the situation or you don't like what's going on, but what are you doing to change it? What are you doing to make things better? What are you doing to make your life better? And it's like, I think you're right. Like, the more we take on, the more we can be who we want to be, and the more our life improves because of that. So I think this is a big part of his because he thought the best life is the authentic life, right? One where you live, you're the creator of your own values, you're living a life that's your own. And I think
Yeah.
that comes from that kind of agency demands you take responsibility.
That reminded me, I think it was Buckminster Fuller, the guy who created the geodesic dome. I think it was the story of him, but it could have been someone else. Actually, it might even be like a couple people who had gotten to a point where they were like literally about to commit suicide. They were contemplating taking their own life. And then they were like, you know what? I'm gonna, I can, I can always commit suicide. So why now? You know? Why don't I take 1 year and just take complete responsibility for my life, try and do everything I can to change it, and then if at the end of the year my life is still terrible, then I'll just take my own life. And it was a very, very successful person. I think it was Buckminster Fuller, but uh, basically they changed their complete life. And or it could have been William James. That may be also him. the psychologist guy. So one of the two, or both.
Yeah.
But basically, it completely changed your life, and they became a very, very successful person. But it is an interesting thing because it's like, yeah, for all of us, it could be where maybe we just need to take more responsibility.
I think that's absolutely true. And I think you do, because, right, nobody's going to change your life for you. Only you are. If you don't do anything, it's going to stay the same. And I think that's why a lot of people are unhappy. I mean, we see it all the time with people in work and stuff that just are miserable doing their job, but they feel, and I get the feeling, right? You feel trapped because it's like, well, I can't, because you have bills, because you have family, because you have responsibilities, other obligations, right? It feels like you can't do anything to get out of it. So you just have to, just carry that burden on your shoulders and grind through the day, and life's miserable. But there is always some possible things you can do to change once you start taking action. It's like finding time to do things differently, going outside of what you normally do to make things better and starting to make those changes that will make your life your own rather than somebody else's.
Well, yeah, it's like what you said there. There's so many variables. So like there's so much stuff going on. Like everybody has work and they have their family and they have things that they enjoy doing and they have the distractions and they have their
Yeah.
pleasures and their pains and their addictions and all these different things going on. And at the end of the day, it comes down to what do you choose to do?
Yeah.
Because it's not true that you can't do it. Nobody's holding a gun to your head saying, no, you can't do that. But
Yeah.
really, it's what do you choose to do? Maybe you're choosing to scroll mindlessly on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok for hours instead of spending those hours to do something that could change your life.
Well, I remember too, like when we were I remember when we were in learning program, right, in the boot camp, I remember talking to some of the other people in our group, and I was like, well, and they were like, I don't get this. I was like, well, how much time are you spending like on it? And they're like, well, I got work, and then I got, do this and that. I'm like, well, dude, if you're not doing anything, like you're not gonna understand it. It's not like it's just magically, I don't know, comes into your brain, right? It's not the Matrix and stuff. So, or maybe it is, but if it is, we don't have that cool feature. So like, I mean, but it's funny because I think it's so easy to fall into that trap. Like, because it's way easier to blame other stuff than ourselves. Because once we blame ourselves, we realize, oh shit, I can also change it then, right? It's also on me mostly to make this better, to make my life better. And I think that is a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people. So it's just easier to just blame everything else and just keep going with it. And it's sad because you also then don't ever get a chance to live a life that might be way better than that.
True. Yeah, so I think that's a good spot to wrap it up.
Yeah. All right. Good. Yeah. So there you go. You are responsible. Take responsibility. It's a good thing.
Yeah, try it on for size. If you never tried
Yeah.
on a lot of responsibility, try it on for,
Yeah.
a year.
Yeah.
You can always shuck the responsibility after that.
You can actually. Yeah. That's the funny part, right? You can always go back to your old way of thinking.
Yeah.
If if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, let us know. You can leave it in a comment on the YouTube video, or you can email us. There is the emails in the show notes. Until next time, though, we'll do another episode later this week. This is the Existential Stoics podcast. I'm Danny. That's Randy. I'll see you later, Randy.
Later, Danny.